I'm Katie.
I'm Anna.
She's a psychotherapist.
And she runs a photography empire. Together we make music and we podcast
to encourage ourselves
and you
to do the things that scare us most.
Hi, everybody. Today we get to hear from Tony Sutherland. Tony is a seasoned musician, writer, and leader, and he's one of the most creative, funny, and caring people I know. I can't wait for you to hear what he has to say about learning from your mistakes and being creative as a leader. Without further ado, here's Tony Sutherland. So, Tony, we're so excited to have you with us today on the Doing Scary Things podcast. And the first thing we want you to do is
sing every answer just like
Would you be willing to do that?
I'm just kidding.
Actually, regular speaking will definitely suffice. But if you would just introduce yourself and tell our listeners a little bit about you.
All right. My name is Tony Sutherland. I am 52 years old. Been married 30 years, and I have two grown kids. One is starting his fifth year at Georgia Tech. He's 22. My daughter's 18. She's graduating from high school. Will be starting her second year in college.
Wow.
I am currently, I travel across the country and internationally ministering in local churches, doing leadership conferences, marriage weekends with my wife. Been in ministry now for almost 30 years. I am also the worship director at Free Chapel Gwinnett campus in Swanee, Georgia. I would consider myself just a very diverse, hands-on ministry leadership consultant with pastors as well. Been doing that for many years, assessing church environments, going in and helping churches and pastors and leaders understand their role. And I guess in all things, my biggest focus is to be an authentic person with people, to use my platform to not be better seen by people, but to better see the people I minister to.
And we don't specifically cater to like ministry or the Christian community with our podcast, but you do have this emphasis on authenticity and good leadership and seeing the people that you're around. So I suspect that probably applies to more than just the church, right?
It really does. Absolutely. I feel like that leadership starts with you. It doesn't start with a position or it starts with you. You got to be able to lead yourself well. And so that's really my take on it. I am primarily, my platform is the local church. But when I go into certain environments, I want to kind of help leaders just get to be more real instead of, I guess, church mindset. I still enjoy music. I still feel like I'm strong in that area, but I feel more like I want to hit the author, speaker. That's where I'm at right now.
I mean, that's something we talk about a lot is multi-passionism and even changing your mind, and the idea that a lot of the way I was raised, at least, and I think, my parents' generation mindset was like you get one job and you stick to it. And I think what's happening now is we're kind of opened up to limitless possibilities. So it's like, well, I tried this and it served me well, but maybe I want to move on from that. We're encouraging people that that's okay. Like, we are these multifaceted people that can do more than one thing at a time.
Yeah.
It comes down to, if you're diverse in talent, you should explore every side of it and optimize it and use it. I relate it to the story of, it's a parable in the Bible where the guy had 5 talents, one had 2 and one had 1. Well, the guy that was successful used all of them. Mm-hmm. I say, if you have 5 talents, don't use 3. Mm-hmm. Use them all and maximize them all and grow them all. If you have a business side, maximize it. There was a leadership thing a little while back that says a real leader learns how to dismiss all of the things that he's wasting time with and focus on the one thing. But that's real difficult because you're shutting some of that diverse side of yourself down. Like, people that get locked into one thing get really frustrated because there's other things they can do. So what they'll start doing is they'll start doing it. Like, for instance, for me, my whole life, I was into music for 20 years. Well, there was a season of my life where I started really, and I taught and I spoke and I did all that, but really because I was more creatively musical, that's what people recognize me for. Sure. In business, they call that diversifying your line. Like Volkswagen made Volkswagens for years. The little Beatles, they made those things. And that's what identified them as a company. But when they made the Jetta and the van, their business actually decreased because people thought, we don't want all that. We want the Beatles.
We just want the Beatles.
We want the Beatles. So why are you doing all these other things? And so it's hard to get people to disconnect from the former you that you knew. And the older you get, especially I talk about in marriage a lot, you have to be open to each other growing and changing. Because it's easy to like, you've changed so much. Like you used to love music and you used to be a musician and now I don't know who you are anymore. And of course, my wife has been great. My wife is she just rolls with me. Okay. But most people aren't like that. It's like, like think about Harry Connick Jr., piano jazz master. Right. And now he's doing acting and talk shows and everything. And it's like, where did Harry go?
Yeah.
People, it's just really, really hard for people to disconnect, but you still have to do it because at the end of the day, you can't just do what everybody wants you to do. You have to be you and you have to go after what you want. And you have to, I don't think there's any method to it. You can't disconnect people from what you were, but you can gain a whole new audience for where you're going. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I could not agree more.
Yeah.
That's resonating so much. And like you brought up the Harry Connick Jr. example, and people are so quick to criticize, right?
Right.
And it's like, put yourself in his shoes. Like he mastered something.
Yeah.
And he still had years left of his life.
Right.
Like, why wouldn't he learn something new, And if we are constantly learning and growing and challenging ourselves, we're going to be in those positions where it's like, that's something we are very comfortable with. We're like, we're beginners in this area, but we won't be beginners for forever.
Right.
We're going to work really hard, and move to another level. So that's encouraging, but it is uncomfortable when you're in that beginning stage.
One of the scariest things I ever did was launch out to this itinerant, diverse thing. I used to be on staff at churches and I was locked in. I was, on paid
secure,
salary and
quote unquote.
Yeah, but when I launched out 15 years ago to do what I'm doing, it was very unnerving. I had a handful of relationships. At the time that I was getting ready to do it, I had resigned from a church job and I was actually interviewing at another big church in Dallas, Texas. And I'd always just contemplated doing this thing, when I say on my own, like becoming what I would call a parachurch organization, something that wasn't locked into a denomination or a church, but I was able to just kind of spread my wings and just kind of, sky's the limit kind of thing. And I remember I was sitting in my car at a fork in the road. I could have gone over an overpass to get home and take a different route or take the interstate. And when I came to that decision, I got a call from a friend of mine. He said, "We've been praying for you, and we just think that God is speaking and saying you should just take the risk." And I was at that fork in the road, and I just kind of knew at that moment that
literal
like with my few tiny relationships that I had, I knew right then. I called the church in Dallas. I said, "I just don't think this is what I should do." And I literally just shut the door to all of the other options and said, "I'm going to do this. I'm going to start this ministry. I'm going to start this itinerant. I'm going to start speaking. I'm going to start traveling. I'm going to start doing conferences." And I didn't have a whole lot of relationships, but I did call those people up and say, "You remember that time you thought that maybe you would like to have me come speak at your church? I'm just letting you know I'm available now."
Nice.
That's how it happened. I mean, and they said, "Really? Like, well, what's going on?" And so they just started, asking all these questions like, "What are you going to do?" And I said, right now I'm not really sure, but I'm going to start developing it and so my close friends, just opened the door because I was their friend.
Right.
And in doing that, I was able to start experimenting and, I had to start getting busy. Mm-hmm. I had to start because it wasn't like, well, there's no time to think about it now. You have to do this because you have 2 kids and mortgage payment.
Yeah.
And so it was really scary at the time.
We love the idea of start where you are and use what you have.
Right.
And that's what you did. You were like, okay, well, now that I've made the decision, I'm going to pursue this. What do I have and how can I start? And you did. You talked to everyone you already knew of, said you were available, which I feel like that's a really vulnerable thing, right?
It is.
That's a really scary thing to go, hey, I'm doing this new venture and my schedule's wide open. I'm just getting started.
Yeah.
I knew this is what I was supposed to be doing. And there were just times where it's like, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how I'm going to make this happen, but I know I'm supposed to do it. Because a few years before that, I felt like I need to write 25 goals on a piece of paper and just kind of start shooting for it because I have to write a vision down, write something on paper. So I wrote some things I'd like to do, folded it in a piece of paper and just stuck it, in my Bible. One of them was write books, travel, and I had been doing this in my mind for many, many months before this had actually happened. And so I was already living it out in my mind. And I say for anybody that's living something out in your mind and it won't go away,
yes,
then you know, like, well, maybe it's just a fantasy. Maybe it's just kind of like myself. Maybe it's just a time of the year. Maybe it's a season I'm in, and maybe I'm just frustrated. But if it doesn't go away, then you've got to do something about that.
Absolutely.
You can't just sit around with this frustrated dream and idea of something you want to do and never attempt to do it. Yeah. And if not now, when? That's kind of a phrase to me that I say so often.
And I want to, really point out what you said about, for you, it wasn't accepting a job. Like that would have been an easier route, quote unquote, because that comes with certainty, or it comes with at least expectations, or, you have your plan. I think a lot of our listeners are in that boat of like, well, why would I pursue this? Because I don't have anybody calling me, asking me to do it. Doesn't that mean I'm not ready? And I think in a lot of ways, that's not what that means.
Yeah.
Like what you're saying of these ideas are in my head. I know I'm capable of that. Like, I feel like we have to cling to that and just take whatever steps necessary to get started.
You were in position, you were available, and you weren't ready yet, all at once, And I think that's really interesting, because I really do believe that when we're sort of taking risks for the sake of these things that we're created to do, we do pick it up along the way. Like we do show up and then become equipped many times. Like most times we're not getting ready beforehand and having a nice, perfect dress rehearsal and then, putting on all the finishing touches and then stepping into it. Like that is not how it ever works.
Right.
Absolutely.
In my experience anyway.
Some people, they don't start because they don't feel quote unquote ready. They're not ready. I say one of the chapters in one of my new books that's coming out. One of the chapters is called "Start Someday." It's like the antithesis of what you would do. So, the idea of each chapter is like, what's a big failure or a mistake you make in life? It's the mentality of starting someday. And I think for most people, the word someday is just another word for never.
Absolutely.
It just is like, I'll do it someday. I'll do it someday. I'll do it someday. Because I don't feel ready. But I think just like what Anna was saying a few minutes ago, ready is really in the pursuit. You ready yourself. There's no other better way to ready yourself than get out. If you're in a boat and there's a hole in the boat and you're sinking, you'll figure out how to fill it pretty quick. And then the next time around, you know how to plug up that hole. And most of the time, whenever I've told somebody that I was going to do something, I put it out there. I made it public. Now I have to be true to it.
Right.
I've got a new book coming out.
Yeah.
Sometimes I will create the graphic and the idea. And for myself, I put it out there because now, you know what? I am going to do it, but now I'm really going to do it because I've told you I'm going to do it. And I've told all these people who bring me in to speak. Yeah. I can't show up without it not being there. So it's a way for me to say, it's a way to say, I know I'm not ready, but you know that it's coming.
But I'm going to get ready.
But I will be.
It's going to be ready. Because let's ask you, like if you work for a full-time job, that's exactly what they do. Yeah. They'll tell, like, especially on staff as a church, hey, we've got this event coming up and we're not ready. Yeah. But we got to be ready.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think, why not do it yourself instead of being told to do it?
Yeah. You make your own deadline, essentially. A lot of people work better with restrictions because it's like, if I have a year to do something, am I really going to work on it today? How long am I going to work on it today? Because I know I have a year to kind of put it off. If I have 2 days to do something, you better believe I'm going to be working on it as hard and fast as I can,
Right.
Yeah. I don't ever really claim to be ready for anything, but my life experiences tell me, hey, this is how I did it back then. This is how I'll do it now. It's easy to procrastinate for fear because you don't think that it will hit the target when it comes out. Like there's a lot of reasons why you delay. But I just feel like for me personally, any success that I've ever had, and when I say success, I don't talk about, being successful doesn't mean everybody knows who you are. Being successful is being happy with your life and knowing that you're on the track that you're supposed to be. Yes. Like when I am writing my books, I'm enjoying life.
Yeah.
Sure, you want to have the dream of it landing and getting great success and everything. But that's when I'm doing what I know I'm supposed to be doing, whether it is getting the applause or getting the pay. If, of course, obviously, we want to make a living.
People like applause and pay.
We want to be financially substantial,
right?
Not financially success. What is successful? Well, I'm enjoying my life and I'm enjoying what I'm doing.
Right.
And at some point, there comes a time where you're like, okay, I'm not making any money doing this, but you'll cross that bridge when you get there.
Yeah.
How can I make money doing what I'm doing? But if you don't have anything to make money with, you're building your product, you're building your brand, you're building who you are, you're building what you're recognized for. And I'm just telling you, it's sort of like, I think of it this way. A quarterback throws the long bomb. If you don't run to catch that ball, you will never catch it.
Right.
So a wide receiver's running, he doesn't have the ball, and it's up in the air, and he's being hit with all kinds of opposition and everything to try to keep him from catching it. But when that ball's timing begins to land, if he's there and if he's been running, he'll be there to catch it. And opportunity is coming.
Yeah.
But if you're not running and writing and producing and building and doing that, then you're never going to catch opportunity.
Right.
So many people miss it in life because they never leave the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, they never start running.
They don't run. And it's running is hard.
What if I don't catch it?
You guys know way more about football than I do. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, maybe many of your listeners are going to learn a little bit about football. Which,
I'm just kidding. I did want to ask you, so I think you shared that was about 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. Has there ever been a time when you took a risk like that and it didn't work out, or you regretted taking the risk?
I kind of bundled it all up. There were seasons where I thought, man, I really, because I've written this. Okay, so I've recorded maybe 9 or 10 recording projects in my life. Each one got a little better each time. I've written 6 books. I'll be working on my 7th after it's already in my mind and I get started. There have been times where I felt like, man, it was a big waste of time. Nothing happened with that. Like one recording I did in Nashville cost me $40,000. I recorded it with a big producer, big musicians, people that tour with this person and that person. I mean, and the reason why I decided to do it in Nashville, because I thought, well, I could record all these custom recording projects from Mount Everest and over in Afghanistan or wherever it is, and nobody would ever hear about it. So I decided to immerse myself where it's happening. So I contracted a producer, and I just thought, I'm going to start creating a buzz in the Nashville area. And I recorded this $40,000 record. And, so then after the producer recorded it, he said, now, I'm not the company guy. I'm not going to get it signed. And I have some connections. I'll help maybe, get you connected to some labels. So I went in and started seeing labels, started letting my project get heard. We'd have one-on-one listening sessions. And it seemed like it was really going to land and be, like, man, this is it. I finally made the right decision. And nothing ever happened with that record. Nothing. I've sold 2,000 or 3,000 on, units, actual CD units, and, made some iTunes downloads, and it did pretty good. One of the songs, kind of landed with people. I think if you look at it on YouTube, I think it's probably got the most hits as far as one of the songs I've written. And I think there's something like, it may have in between 50 to 1,000 views. But 50,000 to 100,000 views, that is.
Somewhere between.
But the project just never, it's like, so I'm thinking, man, did I just waste?
Right.
Because see, a lot of that money was raised through donations and contributions and people that have believed in me and support me, and it has opened some doors. But in my mind, it just didn't have that break open success that I was hoping. So I started feeling like, man, I really regret spending the money on something that just didn't blossom like I thought it would. But there are times when you do those things that if you don't, there's just so many things you're not gonna learn.
Sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it sounds like you're acknowledging that you had your doubts kind of, or you had your maybe even disappointments about it, but you don't regret doing it.
I don't regret it, but there were seasons where I did.
Yeah.
Overall, I don't.
Yeah.
But there were seasons where I was like, oh my gosh, I just wasted so much of my time.
Yeah. And your hopes.
But then I think now everything that you do in Road to the Passions that you have, you are developing and growing, because you don't have a personal coach or instructor riding along with you in life saying, okay, take this turn, take that turn. For me, it is the Spirit of the Lord in me that helps. But even then, there's no perfect, you can't audibly hear that all the time. There's always a step of faith. It doesn't matter, or it wouldn't be called faith.
Right.
If you were always basing it on exact instruction and how, there would be no faith involved. There would be no risk involved. I think anybody who's ever accomplished, succeeded greatly has either dared greatly or failed greatly. There's, those are parts of the equation. But for me, success is what I've come away with from the table, and it's school. Like that whole period of my life where I was doing all that and the project, it was like I was in the studio. I was connecting with people, building relationships, writing, using this creative mind to do things that if I would have just sat back and done nothing, I can say this, I have an awesome project. I still believe in it. And all throughout my life, I've written some songs that have been published and had some great success. One of the songs I've written is sung in literally almost 160 nations of the world and local churches everywhere. But it wouldn't have happened if I wouldn't have just stepped out and started doing it.
Right.
Did I get the worldwide success that I was hoping that project would get? No, but there are pieces of influence that have come out of those projects that really have made a difference in people's lives.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, do you want to be famous or do you want to be influential? Do you want to be different or do you want to make a difference? And I can tell you this, I know I'm making a difference. Some people that I've influenced and impacted in my life would not be influenced or impacted if I had not pursued the thing that I'm supposed to pursue.
Yeah.
And I'm happy doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I love it. I don't care if I'm in front of 20 people, 50 people, 500 people, or 5,000 people. I treat every single opportunity that I get as like if I were in front of massive, because I love doing what I'm doing. And if that's success to me. If you don't love what you're doing, I mean, if you're just doing it to get by, but man, I love doing what I'm doing.
Part of your understanding about that is that you recognize that you matter and that you doing the things that you're passionate about has a place in the world that matters to other people too. And I think that's a really important equation. Because I think a lot of people, if they're scared to do something that they want to do or that they've been dreaming about, they've been living it in their mind for years, like you said, they are afraid that it's not going to have an impact, or they're afraid that maybe they don't really matter. Little old me and my dream, like, what does it really matter, But the way that you're describing your own life, the way you have engaged with your passions and given them the front seat that they actually deserve, it's like... Right. There's this underlying recognition that I matter and what I'm doing matters because it matters to other people. And I think that that's really powerful. You have to recognize all those parts.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say with that whole story, we set our own expectations, right? And so I love that you can come out of something like that and maybe it didn't go the way you would have hoped. When does life go exactly like we would all hope? But you can say, like, these good things happen, and I learned this. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, you're fine, And I really appreciate the fact that you said, I raised that money, and obviously that's something to be taken very seriously, that you used other people's money and, you did everything you could. But at the end of the day, like, you're fine, like, you moved on from it. And I just am the type of person that if I don't take a risk of that level, it's like, are you going to spend the rest of your life wondering, what if I had gone to that producer and done it, versus, well, you did it. You tried, you put everything you had into it, and it went a different direction, and now I'm here. And so now I'm building from where I'm at now.
I talk about, of course, I could refer to so many places in this new book that's coming out, but I think people live in the land if only I'd. Mm-hmm. If only I'd. Because they'll never know. So I can say that, I have the satisfaction of knowing that I did. And I'm going to continue to do it because I know it's what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
You've got to have that inner drive. If you build your whole life based on the success that you've had, you'll give up all the time because most people, they spend most of their life failing than they do succeeding. Succeeding is just nothing but going through failure without losing enthusiasm. To me, it was an interesting story. Like Thomas Edison, he said he failed 10,000 times at making the light bulb. And someone asked him one time saying, what did you do at all those other times you failed at doing that? He says, I didn't consider that failure. I considered it ways of learning not what to do. Learning what not to do.
How to not make
how to not make that same mistake again. But see, there again, most people that you talk to who've had great success in any way, when I say success is, the volume of accomplishment. It's just, they just don't give up.
Yeah.
And, most people, they only see the side that is exposed.
Sure.
They don't see the underbelly of it. And so for me, it's not a matter of, I just don't see in my mind how I can stop pursuing the things. I think there's been times where we all say, man, I'm just giving up. But I think it's really more of a personal luxury for you to say that. You don't really want to give up. You don't really want to stop, but you just want to just kind of throw it out there into the universe. Like, I am just tired of this. But then down inside that there's just that thing that's not going away. And I think people need to pay attention to that not going away urgency. Like, I
agree.
Yeah. Many people saying, like, how can you make a living at that? It's not how can I make a living, but it's how can I not live without doing this?
Yeah.
And I think that's really the thing that pushes me on, knowing that, number one, it's the call of God on my life. Number two, it's just, I think I would die if I didn't do it.
Yeah.
No,
I love that. I'm always happy to hear somebody explain something that I have felt. And I think it took me longer than I would have liked to realize, oh wait, that thing really isn't going away. And I should listen to it, and the fact that I wish more people talked about it because I think I would have had the courage as a teenager even to be like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do,
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of people have that. The thing that I feel that both of us have battled with is that sunk cost fallacy of, okay, for a long time you're like shoving the thing down really far, like ignoring it and like not giving it the light of day because you're like, no, that's not a real thing. It's a fantasy or whatever. And then at some point you have that realization of it's not going away.
It's not.
It's really not. But then you've been in the shoving it down as far as it will go mode for so long that you're like, well, how am I gonna change my mind about that now? Because I have this new awareness that it's actually not going away, but I've spent 10 years trying desperately to ignore it. What do I do with that? Yeah. So, but like, there's no shame in that. There's no shame in it. As soon as you realize, hey, this isn't going away, like that, go. That's your starting point, and it doesn't matter that it was 10 years that you spent not at that starting point. You're there now. Yeah. And that's what matters.
I think a lot of the reason why we wrestle with the not going away unction that we have is because we're afraid that someone will take it away or something will take it away. Here's an example. You walk into Barnes and Nobles, you're an author and you see a million books around you. And the first thing you think is, what good would my book do? Because like, how can my book stand out from all of this? And it's like you walk in there and you just go, what's the use? So what you're doing is the thing that won't go away. You're allowing that thing to take it away from you. You have to learn how to fuel the excitement yourself of that thing inside of you. So you go in and you go, okay, what book is sticking out the most? How can I make mine do that? So you learn it, you use it as a learning experience. And you try to turn it around to build the excitement.
Yeah.
Build the excitement of it. Like, okay, so I discovered in writing, one of the things I discovered in writing is that in your artwork, you have 6 seconds to appeal to someone who walks into a Barnes and Noble. 6 seconds for your artwork to stick out.
Count them. 6.
So what makes artwork in a book stick out? So now you're going, okay, instead of this taking away the thing that won't go away, I'm going to use it to build into the thing that won't go away, to make it more exciting. Secondly, What is another takeaway when you're afraid of that thing going away? Takeaway is what people will think about it. You can't do that. It's like you have to start saying, I think they're going to be excited about it.
Yeah.
I can't wait to share this with people. And so you have to learn how to fuel that don't go away thing inside of you.
Yeah.
So that you keep going, because again, you are your own motivator.
Right.
Whenever that feeling comes like, what good is this? I'm going to go, it's going to be really good. It's going to do a lot. You have to talk to yourself.
So you have that answer ready.
Yeah.
You already know the answer.
Right. Post-it notes, whatever you got to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what I do for my books, the first thing I do, and I tell people, like, they go, how do you write a book? I say, well, the first thing you have to do is see what it looks like. So I tell people, create the graphic now. Like, just so you can say, oh man, there it is, So you envision yourself shooting toward it. Do the exciting things that make you shoot for it. Every single book that I've ever written, I went ahead and had my graphic artist design the cover so that I can see what I'm shooting for. Instead of, well, I think that because it becomes, if it's fuzzy here, it'll be a fog out there.
Right.
So you got to make it clear in here so that you have a target that you're shooting for. And it just makes you excited. You see it on the shelf, you see it on Amazon, you see it on Kindle, and it just makes you excited. You got to keep yourself excited while you shoot for that goal, because there's a whole lot of things out there that'll make you unexcited about it.
Oh, absolutely. I love that.
Could I ask you to tell us a little bit about your book?
Yeah, sure. Well, I've been talking about it a little bit. So, well, anyway, this is my 6th book, and, I'm learning each time I write a book. This one, I think, for me personally, is the one I'm most excited about. It's called Leader Slips.
Which I love.
It is. Yes, it's all about learning and leading through failure. That's the subtitle.
Yeah.
I decided that I wanted to go ahead and be bold about it. So it's a yellow book with black print. I mean,
Love it.
It is just like, let's just
Straight
get out.
up.
Let's just be honest about it. Let's not be subtle about it. Let's be bold about it. Leader Slips. The image is a guy that's falling, and the eye of the word slips is tilted, and he's kind of like falling off of that eye.
Yeah.
So in there's a lot of subtlety.
I was like, oh man, there's like a big ego message in there.
It really is. It really is.
It.
And it's so the book is it's 23 chapters. They're not long, and each chapter is the antithesis of something that causes you to fail. So. Like, for instance, one of the titles I talked about earlier is Start Someday.
Yeah.
That's a major leader slip. If that's the mentality, you will fail if you start someday.
Right.
One of the titles in the book is called Work Nonstop. That's a way to fail, especially if you have a family, kids, you will suffer for that. And most of these, all of them have come from things that I've failed at. And again, sometimes I won't go into full detail of the story, but I will just basically say that I failed greatly at this. I do tell some specific stories. I do get real candid in a few chapters about some struggles I had in a local church. And I have changed the names and the states and the locations so that it's very general. It's very general. If I can help somebody, a young leader, avoid some of the things that I've done, even they'll probably still do them, but if I can help people along the way avoid some of the areas where I've slipped and failed, success. That's it. I don't care, man. I would love to be a bestseller. I'm probably somewhere down on the 200th and 1000th bestseller list. But if I can help young leaders and people avoid some of the pitfalls that I've fallen into, then I have succeeded at my job.
So I have a tricky question for you. Like, so many of those experiences that you write about, that's what made you such a good leader. So if you're just hoping that you can expedite that process for other people, because if they learn it from you, then they're not going to go through it. You know what I mean? Hopefully. I mean, that's the goal. But what do you think about that it's kind of a conflicting idea the way I've set it up. Like, well, going through it is what makes you a good leader, but how will not going through it make you even better of a leader?
Well, everybody's going to have their own slips. And I think, too, part of it is, this is what I said in the book. I'm saying failure is unavoidable. You cannot, no matter how careful or cautious you are, that's why the book is yellow. No matter how cautious you are, you're still people. I've made a joke about this. I said maybe I got my idea from Waffle House because it's yellow and black. I don't know, but it's just weird. Yes. Or Dollar General. But anyway,
it's like
so am I branding the book at a discount rate? But no, the idea is that the book is to teach people more than how to avoid the failure, is to know that you're going to fail and learn how to embrace it and not be defeated by it and not be. That's the greatest thing about the whole message of the book is you're going to fail. You can't avoid it. You're going to hit snags, but you can't let it make you. You can't let it like derail you. You got to just be okay with your failure. Well, there's actually several things I share about slipping, but a banana peel will teach you that there's going to be stuff in your way and you're not going to see it all. You're going to slip. So what do you learn from that? I mean, what do you learn with the fact that you're going to slip? Don't think if I do everything just right, then I'm going to avoid falling. No, I'm going to fall. So the book is really more about how to, I think I best teach from my failures than I do my successes. Because people are like, yeah, that's really good. I'm glad you succeeded, but really, I'm just not there, and I don't relate with that because most of my life is screwed up, and so I don't relate as much with your success. So here's what I tell people: my best teachings and sermons and books and even conversations with people are like, you know what? Here's what I'm going through right now. Maybe this will help you too,
right? And
hopefully it will. And then from the successes that I've had, which was really more of a succession of failures that I had. How did I navigate that? Who did I talk to? What methods did I apply? What was my mentality? How did I process the pain? Because to me, leadership, the greater levels and spheres of leadership or influence that we have is only increasing our threshold to handle pain. So if you can't handle greater spheres of pain and difficulty, then you will never succeed to greater levels of leadership. You never will, because that's all it is learning how to process pressure and pain. And people say, wow, I don't want to do that. It's not all that. There's some very exhilarating and amazing things that happen that you're going to love and embrace, and you're going to want to live there, and you're going to want to be on that mountaintop forever. But then there's just also greater levels of pain and difficulty. And if you can teach people how you navigated it, what you went through, or the fact that you did go through it, and you made it.
It sounds like you give these great content areas of these like specific areas and ways that you can fail, but every single one of those is like an example of a process to kind of, learn from it. So it's like, even if you are able to sort of shortcut through a certain problem and avoid it altogether, you're still getting the process, right? You're still getting the example of how did this issue become, a pillar of how I'm now a good leader.
Yeah. Well, I do. Now, I don't just talk about my failure, but I also talk about what it taught me.
Yeah.
And I do offer some things that, kind of bring some perspective to the, okay, how could I turn this around? Like one of the things I do in the book is talk about how do you turn failure upward? Because when you get knocked down, how do you turn it upward? So I take the word failure and I acronym it, F, forget the past, kind of things like that. Yeah. So I do give some antidotes to. They're not. I don't try to be cheesy, but I have been labeled as being corny at times. So I can be that way, but. Again, and this is another thing about talking about like stepping out and doing what, it's like, well, people think this is cheesy. Well, they think it's corny. You know what? They probably will.
But they'll remember.
But you know what, dude? I've got a book on the shelf. What do you have, bro? I mean, like you can sit there and criticize all you want, but it's easy to talk from the cheap seats. And I'm not an athlete, but it's not my world, but I do learn a lot from, different sources. But I just think that people who are, stepping out to do some stuff, they're going to do things that they are afraid that they will do. It's like, oh, will I do this? Yeah, you're going to do that. Oh, will I mess up? Yeah, you're going to mess up. Will people not like what I do? Yeah. Will people make fun of me? Yeah, exactly. Just at front, before you step out, just go ahead and make your list of what you're afraid. This is what I tell people to do. I call it praying the right way. Write it down. So you write the things that you are afraid will happen, and then at the very end of it, say, yes, all these things will happen. Now, some things won't happen. Like you're probably not going to die. I mean, we're just saying the things that that are common sense to you that will use a little common sense. Like people will reject me. Write it down and then check it.
Yeah, well, that's the funny thing. I highly doubt that most of the people who are out there doing their scary things are afraid of dying about it. They're afraid of stuff like what people think or, and not getting anywhere. So that's a really good point. Like maybe you're not going to die is a good reminder.
Right, exactly. You're not going to die.
But did you die?
But did you die? Yeah, exactly.
No, and I love the honesty. I have a very big aversion to people who are standing on a stage saying, just do what I did. It's all going to be great. I don't feel like that's honest. And I don't feel like it's good advice at the end of the day, because the moment something doesn't go as planned, then what? And then you get scared and knocked back. And so I love what you're saying. Like just plan that there will be things that don't go the way that you thought, and you're still fine. You can still keep moving.
Well,
forward.
Our job, this inner job of ours in life is to just make a perfect world for ourselves. That's what we really do every day.
Yeah.
Everything we do is to create this atmosphere where we don't get hurt, where we don't get rejected, where we don't look bad, where everything is because we want to just be like a nest. Like we want to nest this. But there's going to come a time where you got to just fly out of that nest. So many people spend their lives building this perfect little nest, but they don't go anywhere. So the only way you're going to do it is for the mother bird to push you out of that nest. Like it's time to fly. So you can either have the mother bird push you out.
Are you the mother bird?
Well, I'm not the mother bird. I'm actually the bird that's trying to learn how to fly.
You're like, I'm getting pushed out.
Or what? And this has happened to me so many times. And I may be speaking out of audience here, but just take this for what I'm saying.
Sure.
God has told me to do something, and I will not do it. I'm afraid to do it. I'm resisting Him. I'm resisting people around me that are confirming that's what I'm supposed to do, but I won't do it. So guess what? The Lord allows my nest to burn so that I have nowhere else to go. So, for instance,
fire, wind.
I had to resign from a church 15 years ago, but it wasn't like I had the choice. It's like we were asking you to resign. So the nest was burned up. But God had been speaking to me 2 years prior to that I want you to do this. Yeah. And it's just hard for us to take the initiative to do things.
Yeah.
So sometimes a failed job, a failed circumstance or whatever is just the opportunity you needed. I tell people when you hit rock bottom, at least you have a solid foundation to build on. Yeah. And that's what's happened to me so many times. I've hit rock bottom, but hey, all right, it's solid. There's no more falling. So I can really build my life. And concepts help me as a person. Statements and phrases. And sometimes if I get a phrase, I'll write it down somewhere so that I can remind myself to get motivated. Yeah. And honestly, I just think sometimes anything I've ever accomplished or succeeded wasn't really because of me anyway. It was because I, felt like I had a solid foundation in my faith, and I believed that no matter what was going on around me, that God had me. Yeah. And, that's enough. And I would hear those whispers in my heart. I got you and you got this. I got you and you got this. And it motivated me on. I've had a lot of times where there were seasons where it just looked like that this isn't going to work out. But somehow I kept going. Use your past as a reference, but not as a compass. So, like when I look back and I look at my past and I go, wow, look what's happened because I did. In that moment when you can't see this, you can see that as a reference.
The evidence is there when you look behind you.
Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you so much for sharing all this with us. We're really excited. What advice would you give to those that are just starting out and not sure, maybe at that fork in their own lives, fork in the road, not sure which way to go? What advice would you say to them?
Yeah. Well, I think the inner unction we've talked about, that won't go away thing, do you think it's really going to go away? So at least you know that it is something that you should pursue. All right. Secondly is to, I'd say, make a list of all the things that you want to do and like to do and are creative at doing, and rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. Like, what is, like, if you had all these suitcases, which is the most one that you would have to take with you all the time? Because I think sometimes people do need a focus. They need, like, if they've got a lot of different things they want to do, they need to really, for a season, focus on the one thing. If you're a writer and you want to write books, then you have to start writing a book. You know, like, I want to write a book. Well, then write a book. Write a goal. Write down what people can help you financially, morally, because you're going to need people around you. If you're if I'm in my house all the time, it's prophet, priest, and king, me, myself, and I. I've got to have people that I connect with that can help me. I've got financial contributors.
Right.
I've got, I've created a 501c3 non-for-profit.
Your lovely editor.
Yeah, my editor is my wife. And she's amazing, seriously, an incredible editor. So write a goal, write the people that can help you and the resources you need to immediately accomplish that goal. First thing, goal.
You mentioned this, but even as you put yourself out there and start telling people you're doing it, I think people will come alongside of you and offer to help. Whereas if you're keeping it a secret, nobody knows to help you.
Yeah. Stepping out to do project-based, writing books, speaking. Okay, who have you spoken for?
Right.
Get your first speaking engagement. Scrap it. Find somebody talk to a local leader, a church leader or a business leader, and just say, look, I just want to take a risk. I just want to, can we, I've got this teaching idea and I want to do this, and grab 20 of your friends together and just say, hey, man, I want to record a live teaching, see what y'all think about it. But you got to do it. Don't just say, I want to do it. Do it. Be creative. Inspire yourself and you got to inspire others to to be involved with what you're doing.
Right.
Hey man, you know what? I'm going to have a speaking engagement party at my house. I'm going to get 30 people at my house. We're going to party. We're going to have some food. And then I'm going to share with y'all for 30 minutes. I need y'all to help me take that first step and that first risk. Record it, do whatever you want to do to make it fun. But the idea is that you have to create the atmosphere for which you want your ministry or your business or whatever it is to succeed. For me, when I go to a local church, I say, this is what I'm going to need for it to happen, because in my mind, I've already made it happen. So I wrote my first book, Grace Works. It's a 323-page book. I didn't know what I was doing. And I had a guy on Facebook. He called me and he messaged me, he said, who are you? And what is this book I'm reading? And I had just about the same time recorded a project. He said, I love your social media posts. I mean, what you are saying is so relating and connecting with me. He says, I would like to bring you to Germany to do a 10-day Bible conference, and I want to buy 200 CDs, and I want to order some books, and I want you to come over here. And I ended up going over there 2 different times for 10 days but here's the thing. It's so cheesy, but it's like the field of dreams concept. If you build it, they will come. And there really is a truth to that.
Yeah.
You've just created a product and someone out there is going to want it and they're going to invite you. But I just say, start building your product brand, get it going, and then put it out there. I have a new book. I have a new recording. I have some new music. Somebody's going to download it. Somebody's going to ask you to speak. And I promise you, 100% of the time, of all the people that I know that do this kind of thing, doors start opening. Yeah. They do, because you have some goods. Somebody is going to want it. You have to be dedicated to it. You have to be consistent with it. You have to quit worrying about if people think you're on social media too much. That's not my problem. That's your problem. I'm like the Avon lady with brass knuckles. I know what I have, and I'm coming to your house because I'm confident about it.
I love it. Well, that's what it takes. And it's like we're living in this age of creating content. It's like you've got content, create it, put it out. Nobody from Germany is going to call you if you didn't do this,
Doors
that would
open.
Be really creepy if somebody did call you and
well,
just
you
guessed
create
it.
your own doors. People say, I need a door to open, but you actually create your own doors. If somebody isn't opening a door for you, here's what I think about. So I I wasn't getting invited to speak at leadership conferences. Man, I knew I had the content. I knew I had what it took. I knew I had the experience. But there's a lot of times people will just keep you out for jealousy. They don't want to see you ascend, so they'll block you out and push you back. And that's another chapter in the book, holding others back. When you hold others back, you're actually preventing something great from happening by holding others back for yourself and for them. Totally. But anyway, so people would try to hold me back, and I thought, I'm not getting invited to leadership conferences and speaking. What's the problem? Guess what? I created my own leadership conference. I don't need to be invited to one. I will create my own.
It is so interesting. Like, the doors don't open for the fantasy in your head. You know, they open for the reality of what you're like doing. Right. You know,
you're going to have people that go, oh, really?
Yeah.
You know what, man? And you will already create them in your mind before they actually exist. Yeah. Because you're like, people will just resist you and reject you and whatever. And yeah, they will. But I always tell people they roll that 3-minute movie before it's even started yet. And they cast the actors and write the script and everything and the ending. And in their mind, it's a 3-minute movie. And yeah, you're going to have that. You're going to have people that look at that, because we do. Yeah. And sometimes I'll look at something and go, yeah, that's, but that's just the nature of people. But you can't let that, I say people so often live this victim mentality of like, everybody hates me and nobody wants me to be in there and nobody's going to open the door. And that's not even existing yet. It's your own insecurity creating this resistance around you that doesn't even exist. So just shut that thing down and go for it and do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love the point too.
I'm talking a lot with my hands. Good. You can't see that.
I know. Okay. I know we've made this point before too, but think about all the creativity your imagination uses to
imagine this.
Imagine
that is so good. That's so true.
And it's like you could use that to help you
instead
of to hold you back.
Actually, like, why don't you envision yourself? That's the motivating factor. It's like, wow, I see myself standing in front of people. I see myself selling this book. I see myself changing lives. I see myself being invited. One of the big prayers that I pray is new dates, new states. Pray it all the time. It's like a hashtag in my mind. I also see myself doing these things. And so that's what, if I'm going to be doing that, I better be ready. So here it comes. Talk to yourself. Speak positive words. Zig Ziglar says, when you talk to yourself, speak kindly.
Yeah.
Love it. Sidebar, you have a lot more advice for people. It's in your book that's coming out. So I think you've shared so many insightful things that people will so resonate with already, but they can have a lot more of that when Leader Slips is out, which is going to be really soon. And I heard a rumor that you also might be doing a podcast.
I am. We and being here today has actually helped. See, one of the things we've been talking about is launching out and doing things. One of the big limitations for me to do a podcast is the complication and the technical and the editing, which I have done with videos and different things like that. But I just know that a podcast is going to be necessary. It's another area of exposure. It's more work. It's more, you can't let that stuff like get, because that's another hindrance is like, I got to do 2 hours and 3 hours of editing a week and then keep recording these and stay true to it. And I don't have a boss telling me it's due.
Right.
So you have to just decide, what level of exposure do I need? And then the things come up. You get on iTunes, you get on Spotify, and you see all the podcasts that are out there, and they're all being done so well, and they're all, it's like, how am I going to even cut into this podcast world? But then you have people that say to you, you need to do a podcast. Guess what? That's one person that'll listen to it. I'd like to tell those people, like, if you're telling me to do it, then you're telling me you'll listen to it when I do it. Right? Is that what you're saying? So that is, we are definitely doing a podcast. It will be Leader Slips. That will be the name of it. Cool. And we will, that will be, when you go to when you go to the website, leaderslips.com, it is launching when the book launches. We already have 6 months of journals that will go out upon a subscription base. They're already there.
Cool.
So every week for 6 months, you will be able to tap into a leadership resource. You'll be able to connect to the podcast from the website. You'll learn more about the book. We just believed in this book so much that we took an extra step just to really, really, make it have a depth of resource.
Yeah.
Its own website, its own marketing, its own page, its own podcast. And we also have Leader Slips on Instagram. We have Leader Slips on Facebook. It's Leader Slips Book on Facebook, Leader Slips on Twitter. What's is really cool about this is this word does not exist anywhere else out there except for our book. So we landed, which I would give any author any advice. Look up titles on Google and make sure no one else is doing it. You can do it. Titles aren't copyrightable, but it's just better to have your own.
Yeah. Your own like brand recognition and all that.
Right.
That's super cool.
We'll definitely link to all those places in the show notes.
Thank you.
So people can get in touch with you.
Yay.
This has been great.
It has.
I've learned a ton.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Man, it's been great.
Thanks so much for joining us today. If you like what you've heard, take a second to subscribe or share it with a friend. There's plenty more information in our show notes, including a link to where you can listen to our music on Spotify. See you next week. Great job answering the first question.
And cut.
No, lady.
I'm so sorry. We've never had this issue.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's just
First time for everything.
time to mow.
Wow, what's the deal?
I don't know. I don't know where she went.
Just roll the door and I'll say, stop for Pete's sake.